evening, everyone. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for making it here today despite the heavy downpour. I'll be the moderator today. I'm Swiss, and today we have with us Chef Darren Teoh. Darren is a lecturer turned head chef in Dewakan. Okay, can I have a show of hands among the audience today? How many of you are from the culinary hospitality background or have previously or currently owned a F&B business? Show of hands, please. Ah, okay, good. Okay, so then, for those whose hands are not up, okay, and you need a bit more introduction on Dewakan, spare me a few minutes to introduce Dewakan. So, fine dining in Malaysia has matured over the years. And most restaurants, however, they still plate up imported ingredients such as salmon, truffles, and caviar. But while ingredients like bunga ketan, kaffir lime leaf, and other aromatics do make an appearance on the fine dining dishes, mostly they are deployed as fragrance or as garnish. So the local ingredients, however beautiful and freshly available they almost never form the DNA of the dish or fine dining. Here is where Dewakan rise above the rest. Under the leadership of head chef Darren, he has been paving the way to develop novel recipes which incorporates the bounty of Malaysia's indigenous ingredients from the depths of Malaysia's jungle, the wild and the seas. He has been tirelessly plating up intriguing menus that bring together flavor profiles less commonly experienced by the average Malaysian. Okay, so if you're wondering and planning to ask what are Dewakan's signature dishes, there are no signature dishes from Dewakan because Chef Darren challenges the notion that a dish does not reflect a chef identity. The tendency to place a dish on the pedestals alienates the chef from their creation in the first place. Would you welcome Chef Darren? Today we will be doing like a more interactive session. I've watched your podcast, and just for the information of the audience, there was a time in Darren's life that he came to a crossroad after high school, and he was very good with his hands. So he was deciding between doing fashion design, right? Fashion design or being a chef. So at that point of time, could you walk us through like the decisions that you made, who influenced your decision to go into becoming a chef, as well as was there a regret not being a fashion designer?
As you can see, I'm highly fashionable. I typically look like I typically look like I've been dragged out of the jungle kicking and screaming quite often. So you can see my hair. This is generally how I look. I didn't dress up particularly for this. High school for me was a place of disinterest. I was typically not interested in high school, and I felt that my education during high school was very disingenuous. It was, I felt it was people pushing me through classes to pass through the motions, to do the things that are required of me to do just simply because I was required to do it. I'm an avid learner. I love reading. I'm well taught on quite a variety of subjects, but none of these subjects were subjects that SPM was interested in. At the same time, I was very good with my hands, and I don't just mean from what I do with not what I do with cooking. I was very active in a youth program in church called the Royal Rangers, which allowed me a lot of camping skill, a lot of outdoor skill. And at 15 or 16, I was trying to make my own knife and woodworking and things like this. By grace, my father said, "Hey, we should really start thinking about what you want to do for the future." And so we went to a career fair was the Star Career Fair, and we visited a few things. So fine arts was one of the other things that I was interested in. Fine arts, fashion design, and then the last would have been cooking, to be honest. And we started going through all of these, various booths, and it occurred to me very, very quickly that you have no opportunity to make money at all in fine arts. So I kind of like money as well. So that was out of the window really fast. The second aspect, the second choice was fashion design. And fashion design was merely because there was an outlet of creativity. It was not necessarily something that I was akin to or had any skill in particular. I just liked the idea of creative outlet. And after visiting a few schools, I felt that probably that was not the best option for me. Typically also because the person who was trying to convince me was wearing like a snake print shirt. It was a little bit 3 or 4 sizes too tight. Also not my kind of style, I suppose. And then the last was catering. And the deal was, if I were to pursue this as a career, I would be expected to at least complete a degree, and then at least complete a degree in it, and then I can explore this a little bit more. So I had a father who gave me the foresight to not limit myself just because somebody else told me that my intellectuality was not the same level as what I thought it should be. So then I enrolled with a local institute, and during this period, which I would regard as some of the best years of my life, I worked part-time all around here. In small places like wine bars up at Changkat, which used to be, even before No Black Tie was No Black Tie, there was a place called Brez. I used to work there. I used to work at the Hilton that was on Sultan Ismail and not in Central. So we all belie your ages already. So Tin Mine. Because the institute that I used to study at was in Complex Antara Bangsa, which is a building just next to it. So Hilton was just across the road, and so I'll go there and we work Adita Sarawak Secretary Week or something like this, and it's like 1,000 people, and we're doing the busing. And that buzz was exhilarating for a 17, 18-year-old boy, and I truly enjoyed it. That was my first foray into the business. I don't know if that answered your question. Did it? No. What was the question? Yeah.
Regrets not looking back?
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, okay. Let's look at the decision-making process. The decision-making process was there was very little choice. My family is a very, very middle class family, and I being the eldest, and then I have a sister, and then I have a younger brother. 2 of which are academic superstars. So it was a question of return on investment for my father. So it's like I feel that my father is a man who has, in my opinion, an almost infinite amount of wisdom. And he recognized that the path that I need to be on was not going to be the same path as everybody else. And he told me that you can go and do this, just work your butt off, and take a degree and have like some sort of academic qualification in a field that you enjoy, simply because this keeps you at the top of, it helps you flow. And that's where, I've never regretted that decision. Despite the fact, I enjoyed my college years. I did exceptionally well. Like my grade point average is like 3.6 or 3.8 or something. I remember those things very high. For all the nonsense that I got up to anyway. Right? And that, there were a few decisions, there were a few pit stops along the way. It's like, if you've had a career long enough, and I'm sure many of you have, even if you've worked for like about 10 years or so, you question yourself every year or every 2 years. Like, okay, like what am I doing here? Is this worth the amount of effort that I'm putting in? How much more can I take of this? And so I think that there aren't regrets per se, but there were moments of trial and tribulation, if you want to put it that way. Yeah. So the decision-making process, I think, is an ongoing one. You never really arrive at a point. You're always in transit till.
Okay, and then so after your college years, you went on to Singapore to do to work with the Lazani. Could you share a bit more experience? I thought you said that was like some kind of like formative years because you had the experience being with working with fine dining, French fine dining.
The experience in Singapore was really a period in time where I found mentorship in the most unexpected way of what mentorship is. I've never really had a mentor. Besides my father, I've never really had a mentor. Grew up in the church, so a lot of times the idea of a mentor is, something like Jesus and Peter or something like that. And so you feel like, you need like this seafood kind of character in your life. I've never had that. But I personally have never had that. So the years in Singapore the years that I spent in Singapore was everything but that. It was a very hard environment for me because the work was hard. It's tough work. You spend it's a long day and it's a very demanding day, and you do that like 6 days a week. But it created a sense of resilience in me, which became an extremely important value that I've had ever since. Like I think like in every successful story, you're going to find that at the core of it is resilience. To get up, do it again the next day. Maybe you don't. Sometimes you do it dumber. Sometimes you do it smarter. Sometimes you do the same thing you did, but you keep on doing it. And eventually you come to a point where, it's like a machine gun. Like you shoot like 300 bullets, you're gonna get one, right? Sometimes you just need that one. And so I think that my experience in Singapore allowed me to be molded in that sense, and it also gave me a wider spectrum or wider breadth of thought into what the idea of mentorship should be, or what the idea of mentorship is. I mean, the relationships I have with some of my chefs, my previous chefs, were borderline abusive. I come from a very, very old school of restaurants, where cast iron pans go flying and things like this. So some things that you see on movies is partially real. But it's very different when you're on the receiving end. Very different on the receiving end. But I also realized that there was an expression. There was an expression for the respect for the craft that they have. It was not the best expression. It's not something that we practice now as well, but it was their expression, and that taught me that that not everyone is the graceful, loving father that we have. Sometimes it comes through. Sometimes it comes through borderline abuse, and then you suffer from Stockholm syndrome for a while. But yeah, so I think those were some of the initial parts of my career. Again, I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, you talk about mentors found in Singapore. Could you share with us some of the values or philosophies or that you've learned from them? Maybe it could be like the aha, it was not from your father, but it was from your mentors that you learned in Singapore.
I don't, yeah, so that's a very interesting question. I don't think that there is a single one. I think, and I have a particular disdain for, eureka moments, because it ties in with the question I get asked quite a lot. Like, for example, how do you create a dish, for example, right? And for many people, they assume that it's you sitting around, I don't know, a coffee shop table and then eating laksa and then suddenly, wow, and that really rarely happens. There is a confluence. There's a confluence of things that have to happen in your experience for this moment to happen, and that comes from experience. I mean, if you don't know how to handle a knife, there's no way you can conceptualize how to cut certain things. You've never handled fish in multiple ways, you will never understand what it means to have a fish perfectly cooked. Whether it's being steamed or whether it's being pan fried or confit or whatever. So in that same ring, in that same sort of realm, life experience kind of allows you to develop a philosophy, and you borrow from a lot of people, and you don't borrow actively. I feel most of the time when the problem with borrowing actively is that it feels like it's a good idea, and then you try to apply it to life, and then you realize that it might not necessarily work for you, right? But what the things that I do feel imparted in me have been values that I've observed in other people, and observed in people whom I see as mentors, people who I see as peers, people who have been under me, and I feel like, okay, you know what, this particular value has become a niggling thought, and it becomes processed, and then it becomes internalized, and then it becomes expressed. And it's the same way I look at, the Bible. It's the same way I feel. I mean, of course, thou shalt not murder is pretty clear, right? But there are other parts of the word that need time to sit and consume your thoughts before it becomes an actual, actionable way of life.
At this point of time, is there any questions from the audience? This is like
questions.
I'm composing my thoughts for a moment. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, I'm Ramesh. Good evening, Darren.
Hi, Ramesh.
Just a off the bat question. What's the most memorable feedback or comments you've had from a diner or a customer?
I only have one. And the restaurant's been open 9 years. My godmother, she's from Singapore. She's a true Malayali woman. Okay. She came to the restaurant once, and I made inji puli, which is a sort of like a ginger achar, and I served her that, and she said 99% there. And I was, I'll take the 99%. For me, it was 100%, but she's Malayali woman, so she's not going to give you the extra 1%. So she said, okay, 99%, yeah, okay, great, I'll take that. So I think for me, that's probably been the best. I get regular compliments on my cooking from my two kids. That's like second list. Just because I've been feeding them for the past 5 and 3 years. Yeah, if that answers your question.
Okay, so since we are on the topic of comments and reviews, one of the comments that I found on Google, which is a 5-star Google review, was it reads something like this: Imagine, which describes the experience of being in your in Dewa Khan. Imagine you have a friend that lives deep in the Malaysian jungle. When you visit him, he invites you into his kitchen and shows you the wild ingredients he has foraged. The fermentation experiment he is conducting. This friend happens to also be a highly trained and expert chef. He creates and serves you innovative and beautiful dishes with unusual ingredients, dishes that you have never had before and will never have again. This is the experience the chef of Dewakan emulates. It's a Google 5-star reviews. So my question is, what are the strategies that you employ to ensure that customers come in and have memorable experiences such as this 5-star rating guide? And also, how do you handle, because in the Google review there are 5 stars and then there are also some of them are, how do you handle those reviews?
So let's be very clear, there are probably more 2 stars than there are 5 stars. Google is not in my my sphere of things that I care for. Let me tread carefully. I don't care for reviews unless it affects the bottom line. Like, reviews only are a means to your business, right? And when you realize, or when you're able to remove the ego, especially for people who do service, especially for the service industry, it's because you tie a lot of yourself into the business, right? So when people have a adverse review to you, then you feel, you feel hurt lah, because you wear your work on your sleeve. Then when you have a 5-star review, of course you feel great because it comes from you feel like, okay, you've done a good job. So Google obviously is very, very low down my priority. The only reason that I do pay some particular attention to it is because it affects the algorithm of people who search for dining within the area. Most of our 2-star, 1-star Google reviews come from 2 sources: Malaysians and PRC. The demographic, okay? And it's not a question of whether you are refined or not refined. That's not the question. The question is whether you like it or you don't like it. And if you don't like it and you want to put a 1-star review, then you go ahead. That's your prerogative. Just do it, right? If you like it, you want to put a 5-star, then by all means, even better. But I think realizing that you cannot define your work by what other people are telling you about yourself is very important. Even if it was Michelin, even if it was best restaurant, if it was 50 best restaurant, if it was 10, doesn't matter. We've earned all of them. In fact, our latest listing was on OAD, which is another international listing. We got on the list, which we're only Malaysian restaurant on that list. Now, if you allow these sort of listings and reviews to affect how you do your work, then you're going to be cooking for other people, you're going to be doing your business for other people and not for yourself. If you do business for other people and not for yourself, then you fail yourself. And if you fail yourself, the clock for the countdown for your business has already started. And I feel that that's very imperative. It's very imperative that you have a full understanding of why you do your business. And the why you do your business, singularly, and most importantly, and nobody likes to talk about this, you need to make money. That's it. The reason you need to make money, and this becomes before, living my life, dream, passion, all that kind of stuff, is because, it's all before that. It's because if you don't make money, you cannot live your life passionately. It's simple as that. You know, if you say, oh yeah, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to become the greatest Thai chow chef ever, and I'm going to like, you know, blah, 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 and you know, become called a cookery, blah, 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 but nobody comes to your restaurant. Who you want to cook for? Right? So if you have no one to cook for, you cannot cook the next day. Where are you going to get your ingredients from? Who are you going to pay your guests? Or firewood, whatever it is that you want to use, right? You cannot fulfill these things. So the business as a function is first to make money. And if that is an objective, right, for whatever you want to do, right, if your dream could be become the best Thai chow chef, or the best sushi chef, or to own a Lamborghini Urus or something like that, it can be anything. But if you can't figure out this main piece here, without selling your soul, everything else is quite pointless. So with regards to whether or not someone had a 5-star review or if they had a 1-star review, we use Google reviews as a minimum gauge just to see what people are thinking. We don't do customer feedback, we don't do any of that. Because I mean, we're the only restaurant in Malaysia who's got 2 Michelin stars. On that same day that I made that poster, I said something to the effect of, thank you everyone who has rated us 2 stars from Michelin or from Google. You know, so I mean, like, you know, someone's going to come and criticize you, especially in Malaysia. Malaysia, we love to complain, everything also complain, you know, so we should be used to it by now. And whether it's Facebook or whether it's Google, TripAdvisor, and whether people get onto Instagram and say, like, you know, recently there was this other post, I think Tatler listed out something like most sustainable restaurants in Malaysia. And for us, sustainability is a bit more of a highbrow subject, but some of the comments were like, oh, so does this mean that they are vegan and they don't use plastic in the blah, 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 blah. It's like, you can't please everybody because nobody wants to, if the person doesn't want to be pleased, right, they're not going to be they're just going to be generally unhappy and generally sit on Facebook and comment. So in terms of strategy, we only look at these as gauges of where we may be failing, and then we use those moments as points of investigation to see, like, okay, what we can be doing better. So it's very internalized, although it's although the source is external, but the process of using this information is very internalized.
Okay, so you talk about, like, you know, it's very down on your list, the Google reviews and all.
It still annoys me, and it still puts me under a lot of pressure, and it still upsets me. I won't lie, right? However, we've sort of set a system in place that allows us to understand that these Google reviews do not set our value. It doesn't indicate our value. Our value has been set internally as well as externally. Ensure that 5-star, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, it goes through the same process. So if you get a 5-star review, it's easy to say, wow, great job everybody, pat on the back. What it's not easy to do is to read in between the lines and look at where you have fall a little bit short or where you can be doing better. Because you can still see that from a 5-star review. And then you take that same process and you apply that for 1-star and 2-star. So sometimes the list is longer, sometimes the list is shorter. But there's always an opportunity for you to do a little bit better. And that's what we use these comments for.
Up to this point, is there any questions from the audience? Yes, okay, there is one. Yeah.
Hi Darren, Jessie.
Hi, Jessie.
Yeah, I saw from your tasting menu, it's priced from 800 and above. So how do you differentiate yourself from other fine dining restaurants in KL? And I also noticed that you actually use a lot of native ingredients to bring it up, to the fine dining table. Can you, elaborate more on that?
The idea of using native ingredients 9 years ago was very foreign to this country. Nobody would consider going to a fine dining restaurant and expecting to see ingredients that you could get within a 200-300 km radius. So I felt, as a matter of interest and as well as a matter of business, there was a gap there. This is a phenomenon that's happening around the world. Noma, which is one of the forerunners of this, is 20 years old. I spent some time there. Renee is a friend of mine, but only a friend because I joined a path that he was already traveling. And it was also a matter of curiosity. Like I said, I spent a lot of time outdoors. My mom was very part of this formative period. If you ask her about her childhood, she's the kind of person who would say, like, okay, her father would come out of the house screaming and say, "Get off the rambutan tree," because she was climbing in. That's my mom. And so when we were growing up, that was our childhood as well. PJ 30 years ago was a place where you can still find like fruit trees and the guava trees, the rambutan trees, mango trees, and we have like this, I don't know if, maybe y'all should also know that the unspoken rule is that if it's hanging outside of the fence means it's fair game, right? So, yeah, so I spent a lot of my childhood doing that, riding on my BMX and plucking rambutan. So, and you go for walks and she'll show you like, okay, like there's this cherry, that there's this passiflora, which is a type of distant cousin of a passion fruit. Also, I think you might know it as delectable. And it's a small little passion fruit, and she'll pluck this and say, okay, why don't you try this? And it's like, oh, really? It's disgusting because it's so sour, right? But it was interesting because he knew there was something there. And then when I started working in Singapore, there was a moment where Chef stopped ordering fish from France because it just didn't make sense. It was a double standard. It's ridiculous. We go to a Chinese restaurant, we expect the fish to have died like 30 seconds before, if not fresh. But we are super okay with eating a salmon, which has been dead for like 4 days. So there was like this big sort of dichotomy with Chef, and he said like, okay, let's stop doing this. We'll reduce the amount of foreign fish, and so he started ordering local fish that was, that was being farmed at the time because it was Singapore, right? And we used that on the menu, and for me it was the first time, having 30 or 40 live groupas to kill and to fillet and to process, and for me this was an amazing moment. So like I said earlier, we have like a few moments in your life where it comes up to something. So these were like two pivotal moments I felt that led me to begin this journey of understanding the local produce and the local landscape. And that's given me so much of opportunity to travel this very blessed land, which was hence the name Teoh. To travel and to explore the amount of ingredients that we have. Can you imagine that we have one of the not the oldest, but one of the oldest rainforests in the world? So can you imagine the bounty that's available there? You walk in with any tribe from the Orang Asli, and they will pluck stuff out of nowhere, and they survive there. And, albeit that the food was not necessarily for me, but like everything could be eaten, and they will show you a medicinal value that's attached to it or something like this. And this became a matter of curiosity for me, which we then expressed through into the restaurant. And the amount of work that goes into it is represented by the value that we attach to it. How would you be able to underprice yourself. Why would I? The amount of knowledge that I have and that our team has and that we express then into the menu is then represented by the figure that I put according to that. So that's why we're priced at about, what are we now? $800, yeah. And that's not including your wine. Yeah, we think about a guy who's like selling char kway teow, right? 30, 40 years of experience, and we only say his plate's worth $11, and then we complain about that. You are worried about your inflation, price of kuchai going up, taoge going up, all of these things, right? But yet we are so reluctant to award someone who is going to give you nutrition. Okay, maybe char kway teow is not good. Happiness. You know? And yet we are so reluctant to award that. So in terms of pricing, I think we can never really truly come to a conclusion of that. The only conclusion that you can come with is, do I want to afford it or do I not want to afford it? If I don't want to afford it, okay, walk away, go find something else. And that's truly fine with me. I don't know if I answered that question again, but I just went on, sorry.
Yeah, so to just top up, so in your podcast, you also say that in Malaysia, because you said the 2-star reviews came from 2 sections of people. One was the Malaysians and the other one is the PRC. And you said also in the podcast, it's like, Malaysian, we are not a dining nation, meaning like we don't appreciate the platter that's in front of us, but we are more of a eating nation. If there is a buffet that is selling at 20 and you can eat all you want, that's where we'll be. So if this is so, then how do you think we as a group of people in the marketplace could raise more awareness to appreciate people such as yourself and your craft? Like, if I know it requires a big mindset change, but perhaps you could share some light.
I don't think that's your responsibility.
No.
I really don't think that's your responsibility. I mean, if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it, right? And you know, I mean, I can't force you to do it. However, you know, you can open yourself up to an experience, and then you can decide if you like it or you don't like it. If it's within the realm that you're willing to pay for, not everybody's going to be able to afford like $800. And if you're bringing a date, that's like already $1,600, and that's not inclusive of tax, and that's not inclusive of a wine pairing, it's not inclusive of a juice pairing. Even a bottle of water at my place is expensive, right? So I mean, is it necessary that you do it? No, it's not necessary, right? Why? I mean, what you do want to do, however, is you do want to open yourself up to the possibility that you might enjoy it, regardless of the price. You know, so if you are in a position that you can afford it and you want to go open yourself up to it, go do it. But then there are still so many other ways to appreciate craftsmen. You know, from the guy who's cooking something to a person who's making something, your carpenter, your your leather worker, your cobbler. There's so many people that you can appreciate that is within your realm of not affordability, but the realm of influence. So I think like that would be a great step forward. I think also it's important that that as people we apply that sort of same mindset to the work that we do. So it's not just appreciating other people, but also you appreciate your own work and be meticulous with your own work and hold yourself to not a higher standard, but to a standard that you are satisfied with. And then you can decide what kind of standard that you want to be satisfied with. Because I think that the general populace has told us somewhat of a lie. And that lie is that you have to be the best at everything. And I disagree that you have to be the best at everything. I think you have to be the best at what you want to be the best at. And you decide what that is. Because if you're the best at everything, then we create a very homogeneous society. Because the process of becoming best at everything becomes like very similar. And when we become too homogeneous, we become boring. And not only that, we then start to, anything that's homogeneous starts to kill itself. And then and then we are looking at the brink of extinction, which is also fine, but that's a different discussion.
Okay, there's a question from the back, Polly.
Hi, good evening, Darren. I don't know if this question is a bit too simplistic, but can you give us an example of how you would take a classic Malaysian dish and give it the Darren Teoh twist?
I absolutely don't do that at all. So at the restaurant, we have refrained from taking traditional dishes and putting some sort of like a modernist thought to it. For the particular reason being that we're not experts at it. So like we could make a good rendang, but we'll never make a great rendang. Or we're not down the path of making like a great rendang. And I feel like if you can't master like the basic thing, then there shouldn't be a reason for you to muck around with it. Also, have you seen what Malaysians do to people who do these kind of things? They crucify you. So like very typically, if to answer that question, if I was going to take a traditional dish, I would try to cook it to as traditional as I possibly could. I won't take a modern stance on it, and I would try to imitate what people have done for aeons or centuries, which is really interesting because then that really opens you up to the most important thing I feel about cooking is that it gives you context. Because then when you look at a rendang, you ask yourself, what kind of rendang? And if it was a rendang tok, where's this rendang tok from? And who made it this way? What defines this from what differentiates this from the other? And then you then go down this rabbit hole of like discovering things that you never knew about that culture, which is for me an amazing journey. So that's really how I would do that. So when I was talking about my godma who commented on the inchi puli, that's my grandmother's method of making it. And the reason why my godma said it was 99% was because the person who taught my godma how to make that was my grandmother. And so when she tasted it, she tasted, I was going to say she tasted my grandmother, but but she tasted like the essence of what, the spirit of which she was taught. She was experiencing that again. And I feel like that was a success. What we do at the restaurant is completely different. What we do in the restaurant is we look at the ingredients and we look at the best way to express that ingredient, and then we make something that's non-natural and that defies what other people think cuisine is about. So that's why it's a different type of restaurant. So that's the reason why we're not always favored with people who come in with a certain expectation.
Hi Darren, I'm Cindy. I'm also in the F&B business, so I'm actually very fascinated with what you are doing. Yeah, so I have two questions. The first question is to hop on the bandwagon where just now you mentioned that Malaysia has such rich ingredients from our forest. My question is, we have actually a lot of talented chefs in town, but why aren't more chefs actually doing like what you're doing, meaning to actually go down the rabbit hole of exploring and then fully utilizing the beautiful Malaysian ingredients? That's the first question I have. And then the second question is, what made you to be so confident that because of your experience of going to Singapore to learn how to actually learn the art of cooking, what made you to be so confident that you can actually cook the best of you can and to actually price it at a certain price where way above what the normal Malaysian can afford? So yeah, to make it a sustainable business. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's a great question. Assuming that I'm confident is probably the first thing. Everything comes with like a massive risk, and I think that just to answer the second question first, I think that calculating that risk is a very significant part. The reason why we put a slightly exorbitant price is, well, when we first started, we were not exorbitant. We did 10 courses for $175. And we grew steadily from there. You give me an award, I check out the price. No, no, I didn't. We didn't even raise, after our 2 stars, we didn't even raise it until just recently. And we raised it because of inflation of other products. But when we conceptualized the restaurant, Malaysia was not our target market. The Malaysians were not our target market. And we knew that if we built a business that's singularly put Malaysians as our breadbasket, we would fail because of, and I'm talking objectively, right, as a business owner, because sorry, again, how many with restaurants here? Just sorry, yeah, with restaurants. Sure. Okay. When you first started, when you first opened a restaurant, how busy were you? Most cases in most restaurants now, look at the first 6 months of any business that is Instagrammable, you're busy like anything, right? You're slamming it up. You thought you made it for life already, like you can start putting the down payment on that Lamborghini and start hiring another 20 other people to come do your job, right? After the 6 months, what happens? Complete decline. And then probably after that, plateau, and it doesn't pick up again if you don't do something to the business, right? And that's because Malaysians are like that. We're fickle. We go where it's trendy, and then when it's not trendy anymore, you allow it to die its own death, right? So when we strategized, when I was strategizing, we knew that a large pitfall would be to build a business around that. And so I think if I were to answer that question, the second part of the question, is to know the difference between your craft and what you want to do, your heart song, and also be very objective about the business that you're designing. And that designing process has to be a rigorous process. That means the financials, it means the positioning, your approach to marketing, the services blueprint, that means the entire customer experience. I mean, a lot of that has to be, you have to be quite mindful of that. And I felt, and I think that was, these few things have been integral to us maintaining and sustaining the business. This March we turned 9 years old. Next year we will be 1 decade. So in restaurant terms, that's like almost a lifetime. You don't count like 6 yuan and all that, right? For like forever. We felt that in order for you to I feel that in order for you to maintain a sustainable business, you're going to have to reposition yourself every time you reevaluate yourself, and that's super integral. I don't remember what's your first part.
Malay.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's for the same reason. There's so many of these young chefs, and a lot of them are doing things, but because they aren't able to translate the skill set that they have into a business, that's where the failure is. And so they do well for 6 months, and then they struggle. And then they struggle, and then they start doing things that compromise their original thought process, because they want to, okay, you know what, I gotta pay this guy, so I gotta get business, I don't care whose bum is in the restaurant, let's just get that inside and let's just do that. And then you find that as soon as there is an opportunity for them to exit the business, they'll exit. And they'll sell, or they'll close down, or something like this. And is that the fault of the consumer? Partially, maybe yes, maybe not also. But that's the situation here. You know, I mean, if you're in business long enough and you see this, you see a lot of these. There is a lot of talent. Regrettably, I feel a lot of the talent is not here. They may be Malaysians, but they're in Singapore, or they're in Hong Kong, and they're in Macau, where in Singapore you could charge a certain amount and people don't bat an eye. But you do that here, and they'll bat 2 eyes. Bet their friend's eye, so yeah. So that answers your
Yes, thank you.
That sums up our Q&A session. I would like to thank you, Darren, again. Please, if you have more questions and you did think about it, do get a chance to directly chat with Chef Darren.
After this, I charge.